I rented a storage unit out in the industrial part of Detroit back in October while my house was getting renovated. The place was called Secure Space Storage or something generic like that. It was one of those massive complexes with hundreds of units spread across 3 buildings. The kind of place that looks busy during the day, but becomes a ghost town at night. The guy who ran it was maybe in his 50s. Heavy set, didn't talk much. He showed me to my unit on the 2nd floor of Building C, gave me the padlock and key, and that was it. The unit was maybe 10 by 10, just big enough for my furniture and boxers. I loaded everything in on a Saturday afternoon and didn't think much about it. I came back 4 days later to grab some kitchen stuff I needed. It was around 7 in the evening, already getting dark. The parking lot was nearly empty. When I got to my unit, I noticed something odd. The padlock was still locked, but it was facing a different direction than I'd left it. I have this habit of always positioning the lock with the keyhole facing down. It's just something I do. But now it was facing up. I stood there staring at it for a minute, trying to convince myself I was remembering it wrong. Maybe I hadn't paid attention when I locked it. I opened it up and looked inside. Everything seemed fine, nothing missing, nothing moved that I could tell. I grabbed what I needed and left. 2 days later, I came back for some more items. This time it was later, around 9 at night. The complex was completely empty. My footsteps echoed down the hallway as I walked to my unit. When I got there, I froze. The lock was rotated again, but this time I knew for certain I'd left it facing down because I'd specifically checked after the last time. I unlocked it slowly, my heart starting to race. I pulled the door up and looked inside. At first, everything looked normal, but then I noticed one of my boxes had been moved. It was a box of books that I'd stacked against the left wall, and now it was more toward the center. The tape on top looked like it had been peeled back and pressed down again. I didn't go inside. I just stood there in the doorway, looking around the unit. That's when I heard it, a shuffling sound, like something scraping against concrete. It came from the unit next to mine. I knew that unit was supposed to be empty. I'd looked through the small gap at the bottom when I first rented mine, and it had been completely vacant. I stayed very still, listening. The sound stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. I quickly grabbed the box I needed, locked my unit, and walked back to my car. But as I was leaving, I glanced down the hallway and noticed something I hadn't seen before. The unit 2 doors down from mine had a small piece of cloth wedged under the door, like someone had stuffed it there to keep the door from closing completely. I left without investigating and spent the whole drive home trying to rationalize what I'd experienced. Maybe the facility manager had been doing inspections. Maybe they'd moved my stuff by accident, but none of that explained the sounds. 3 days passed before I went back. I'd convinced myself I was overreacting, but I also waited until daylight this time, arriving around noon on a Saturday. The parking lot had maybe 5 other cars in it. I walked up to the 2nd floor and immediately felt my stomach drop. My padlock was missing entirely. In its place was a different lock, a cheap silver one that looked nothing like mine. I stood there staring at it, not understanding. I tried my key anyway, knowing it wouldn't work. It did that. I walked back to the office, but it was closed. A sign on the door said they'd be back in 30 minutes. I didn't want to wait alone up there, so I sat in my car and watched the stairwell entrance. That's when I saw him. A man, maybe in his 30s, thin, wearing a dirty jacket, emerged from the stairwell. He was carrying a garbage bag and walked quickly to an old van parked at the far end of the lot. He threw the bag in the back and drove off. Something about the way he moved, the way he kept looking around. Maji Miyan. When the manager finally returned, I explained about the lock. He looked confused and annoyed, like this was somehow my fault. We walked up to my unit together. He had a master key that opened any lock in the facility. When he opened it, I immediately saw that things had been moved. Boxers were rearranged. Some were open. One of my suitcases was unzipped. The manager didn't seem that concerned. He said sometimes people accidentally put their locks on the wrong units. He'd give me a new lock free of charge, but I insisted we check the units around mine. He was reluctant, but I wouldn't let it go. The unit next to mine was supposed to be empty according to his records. When he opened it, we both stepped back. Someone had been living in there. There was a sleeping bag in the corner, fast food wrappers, empty water bottles, and on the wall, taped up with duct tape, were photographs. Dozens of them, they were pictures of me, coming and going from the facility, getting out of my car, walking down the hallway, unlocking my unit. Some were taken from inside the complex, some from the parking lot. They'd been watching me during every single visit. The manager's face went white. He immediately called the police. While we waited, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. In the corner of the unit, there were scratches on the inside of the metal door, deep gouges in the paint, like someone had been clawing at it, but they were on the inside, as if someone had been trying to get out. The police came and took statements. They searched the unit thoroughly and found more disturbing things. A notebook with my license plate number written in it. Timestamps of when I'd visited, notes about what I was wearing. They tried to get security footage, but the cameras in Building C had been broken for weeks. The manager hadn't bothered to fix them. They never caught whoever it was. The man I'd seen leaving could have been anyone. The police said these storage facilities are common places for squatters, and that I was lucky nothing worse had happened. Lucky. Moved all my stuff out that same day with a police escort. I never went back. But sometimes I think about those scratch marks on the inside of the door, and I wonder what would have happened if I'd gone back at night one more time. If I'd been there when whoever it was decided to come out of that unit and into mine. I work in downtown Dallas in one of those older office buildings that's mostly occupied by small law firms and accounting offices. The building is 12 stories, and the parking garage is underneath, 3 levels deep. I usually work late, often being the last person to leave my floor. This was back in November, and I'd been staying until 10 or 11 most nights finishing up a big project. The garage at that hour is almost always empty, except for maybe 1 or 2 other cars belonging to other late workers. I'd gotten used to the isolation, the echo of my footsteps, the hum of the fluorescent lights. On a Monday night, I left the office around 11. As I walked through the garage to my car on level B2, I noticed a dark sedan parked in the corner. It was a newer model, clean, with tinted windows. I didn't think much of it. Someone else working late? Tuesday night? Same routine. I left around the same time and walked to my car. The sedan was there again, but in a different spot. This time it was closer to the elevator, still running. I could see the exhaust, but nobody was inside as far as I could tell through the tinted windows. I slowed down as I passed it, trying to see if anyone was sitting in there. Couldn't see anything. I got in my car and left. Wednesday night, I was more aware of my... When I got down to B2, I looked around before stepping out of the elevator. The sedan was there again. Different spot, this time near the exit ramp. Engine off this time. I felt a small chill run through me. 3 nights in a row. Always there. Always empty. I walked to my car quickly, got in, locked the doors immediately. As I started the engine, I looked in my rearview mirror at the sedan. That's when I noticed something. The car was backed into its spot, facing outward. The windows were dark, but I could swear I saw a faint glow inside, like someone was looking at a phone screen. I pulled out and left, watching the sedan in my mirror until I couldn't see it anymore. It didn't follow me. When I got home, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was someone who worked night security. Maybe it was someone sleeping in their car. It was probably nothing. Thursday night, I decided to leave a little earlier, around 10. When I got to the garage, my car wouldn't start, just clicking sounds when I turned the key. My stomach sank. I'd been meaning to replace the battery for weeks. I tried a few more times, but nothing. The garage was silent, except for that clicking sound echoing off the concrete walls. I pulled out my phone to call for roadside assistance. No signal. I'd never thought about it before, but being 3 levels underground, it mighty sense. I'd have to walk up to ground level to get service. I grabbed my bag and started walking toward the exit ramp. The one cars used to drive out. That's when I noticed the emergency exit door. The one for pedestrians. I'd never used it before. Always just walked up the car ramp. I tried the door, it was locked. That wasn't right. Those doors are supposed to be unlocked for fire safety. A small wave of panic hit me. I walked quickly toward the car ramp. As I passed into the next section of the garage, I heard a sound. A car door closing. I spun around, but didn't see anyone. The sound had come from somewhere behind me, echoing through the structure in a way that made it impossible to pinpoint. I started walking faster up the ramp toward B1. That's when the lights went out behind me. Not all of them, just the section I'd just left. It was suddenly much darker, with only the section I was in still lit. I stopped and looked back. The darkness seemed thick, absolute. Then the lights in the section I was standing in went out. I was plunged into near total darkness, with only the faint glow from B1 up ahead. My heart was pounding now. I started jogging up the ramp. Behind me, I heard footsteps. Not running, just walking. Steady, deliberate footsteps on concrete. I didn't look back. I run. When I reached B1, those lights went out too, right as I entered the section. Someone was controlling them, shutting them off section by section, herding me forward. I could hear multiple sets of footsteps now, coming from different directions. The sound bounced off the walls and I couldn't tell how many there were or where exactly they were coming from. I sprinted toward the ground level, my footsteps echoing loudly. My breath was ragged. The exit to the street was just ahead. I could see the glass doors leading to the lobby, but then a light hit me. A flashlight beam, bright and blinding, coming from my left behind a concrete pillar. I didn't stop. I ran straight for the lobby doors and burst through them. The security guard at the front desk jumped up, startled. I must have looked insane, out of breath. What? I told him someone was in the garage, that they'd been following me. He looked skeptical, but called the police. When the cops arrived and searched the garage, they found evidence that multiple people had been living down there, in the maintenance area on B3. Behind a locked door that had been forced open, they found sleeping bags, food wrappers, and a makeshift camp. They also found a panel box that controlled the garage lights. Someone had figured out how to operate them manually. The police said that homeless people sometimes find their way into parking garages and set up in maintenance areas, but this felt different. The way the lights were shut off, the coordinated footsteps, the sedan that had been there every night, it felt planned. They never caught anyone. The people disappeared before the police arrived. The building installed new locks and security cameras after that. I requested a parking spot on ground level and never went back down to the lower levels. But sometimes, late at night when I'm leaving, I look at the entrance to the parking garage and think about what would have happened if that lobby door had been locked, if I'd been trapped down there in the dark with whoever they were. I go to college in Portland, and I live in a cheap apartment off campus in a neighborhood that's not great, but not terrible. The building doesn't have laundry, so I have to use a laundromat 2 blocks away. It's one of those 24-hour places, kind of run down, but it gets the job done. I'm a night person, and I usually do my laundry late when the place is empty. Less crowded, more machines available, and I can just sit and do homework while I wait. There's something peaceful about it. The hum of the machines, the warmth, the smell of detergent. This happened over 3 nights in late October. The first night, I went in around 2 in the morning on a Tuesday. The place was empty, like usual. Fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, rows of washers and dryers lining the walls. I loaded my stuff into a washer in the middle row and sat down with my laptop to work on an essay. About 20 minutes in, I heard a machine start up. I looked up and saw one of the washers in the back row was running. I hadn't noticed anyone else come in, but I'd been focused on my work. I figured someone had loaded it before I arrived and set it on delayed start or something. I didn't think much of it and went back to my essay. Another 30 minutes passed, and I moved my clothes to a dryer. That's when I walked past the washer in the back to check the change machine. I glanced at the running machine as I passed. There were clothes inside, men's clothes from what I could see, dark jeans, a black hoodie. Still no sign of whoever owned them. I got my change and went back to my seat. My dryer ran for 45 minutos, and in all that time, nobody came to check on that washer in the back. When my clothes were done, I packed up and left. As I walked out, I glanced back. The washer was still running. 2 nights later, Thursday, I came back around the same time. I'd been busy with midterms and hadn't been able to do laundry on Wednesday. When I walked in, the place was empty again, and the same washer in the back row was running. Same position, same row. I could see clothes tumbling inside through the glass door. This time, I felt a small prick of unease. I walked back to check it out. Same type of clothes as before, or at least similar. Dark, masculine clothing, heavy jacket, jeans. I looked around the laundromat. The bathroom in the back corner had a closed door. Maybe someone was in there. I loaded my laundry and sat down, but this time I kept watching that bathroom door. 30 minutes passed, an hour. The door never opened. The washer finished its cycle, and the clothes just sat there, wet in the dark drum. Nobody came. When my clothes were done, I packed up quickly and left. Something about the situation bothered me more than it should have. Why would someone load a washer and then leave? Why the same washer? The same time of night? The third night, Saturday. I had a bad feeling before I even left my apartment, but I needed clean clothes for the week, and I'd already put it off. I walked to the laundromat just after 2 in the morning. The street was empty, quiet. A cold wind was blowing, and fog had rolled in from the river. When I pushed open the door, my stomach dropped. The washer in the back was running again. I stood in the doorway for a moment, staring at it. 3 nights, same washer, same time. This wasn't a coincidence. I almost left. I should have left. But instead, I walked in and loaded my clothes into a washer up front, as far from the back as possible. I kept my keys in my hand and my phone in my pocket. I sat facing the back of the laundromat, watching that bathroom door. The washer ran. The dryers hummed. The fluorescent lights flickered occasionally. Everything was normal, but my nerves were on edge. When my washer finished, I moved my clothes to a dryer. As I was loading them in, I noticed something that made my hands freeze. There was a piece of clothing in the dryer that wasn't mine. A men's shirt, dark green, with dirt stains around the collar and cuffs. I pulled it out slowly, holding it away from me. It was damp, like it had been in there for a while, but hadn't been through a full dry cycle. I dropped it on top of the dryer and stepped back. My heart was racing now. I looked around the laundromat. Still empty, still just me and that running washer in the back. And that closed bathroom door. I heard a sound then. Soft, metallic, like a lock turning. I looked at the bathroom door. The small indicator that showed occupied or vacant was still showing occupied, but I heard the lock disengage from the inside. I didn't wait to see who came out. I grabbed my wet clothes from the dryer, stuffed them in my bag, and walked quickly toward the exit. Behind me, I heard the bathroom door creak open. I didn't look back. I pushed through the front door and ran the 2 blocks back to my apartment. I called the police from my apartment. They seemed annoyed at first, like I was wasting their time. But I insisted. They said they'd send someone to check it out. An hour later, an officer called me back. They'd found evidence that someone had been living in the laundromat. In the bathroom, above the dropped ceiling tiles, they'd found a sleeping bag, food containers, and a collection of items that had been stolen from customers. Phones, wallets, clothing, keys, personal items from people who'd been using the laundromat at night when they thought they were alone. The officer said the suspect had fled before they arrived, but that they'd increased patrols in the area. They asked if I'd be willing to come down and identify any of my belongings, but I told them I just wanted to forget about it. I never went back to that laundromat. I do my laundry during the day now at a different place, one that's always busy. But sometimes I think about those 3 nights, about sitting there doing homework while someone watched from that bathroom, waiting. About that shirt, that wasn't mine, appearing in my dryer, like a message. And I think about what would have happened if I'd stayed just a few minutes longer on that 3rd night. If I'd been standing there at the dryer when that bathroom door fully opened, what was going to happen when whoever it was finally came out? If these stories kept you up at night, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. There are more terrifying true experiences coming your way. Stay safe out there. And remember, sometimes the scariest monsters are the ones hiding in plain sight.